was called. Universe.
For those just joining us, since we have just gone live, while Robin is looking this up, we were talking about epigenetics.
Yes.
And now some sort of experiment that someone did.
Universe 25, conducted by John Calhoun in the 60s and 70s, and it wanted to understand the effects of overpopulation on social behavior in mice. But it was meant to be a perfect universe. They had plenty of food, they had plenty of bedding, they had plenty of space, and then he would just watch what happened if he introduced a population of mice into this universe. And first, they eat all the food, they breed, they use the bedding, they populate the. It was like a cage of cages. Anyway, get it all populated, and then eventually you'd have like really erratic behaviors, and some of them would go off and be really aggro, and some of them would go off and just groom themselves all the time and have gay sex. And I'm not kidding. And some
Didn't think you
would eat their
were.
babies, and there was all of, and he was like, and the man took this. I'm not knocking Calhoun. I don't actually know if he thought this, but there were people who took those results and went, "Oh, this is what humans will do with overpopulation, and that's why we have gay people with good hygiene." I don't know, whatever. This is terrible. That when you give the mice everything they need, all the food, all the bedding, and all the space that they need, they will still like die of depression. The whole population completely collapsed, and that they ran this experiment a few times, and the population would boom and then collapse, and they would all die. And they were like, "Oh, this tells us such things." And I'm like, it tells you that you didn't put any enrichment in there. Even
right?
mice
I'm like,
bored. I looked at it as I was like, surely they're just leaving this out of the headline, that they put in wheels or toys or tunnels or colors or something. But no, they didn't. They thought that the necessities of survival were merely food, space, and shelter. And I'm like,
nope.
how?
I would also, uh, well, I'm already a gay person with good hygiene, so I guess I can't really say that I would do anything different, but I would go, like, that's the thing, like, you have to have enrichment.
You have to.
And
Even mice
yeah,
have to. They have little brains. Things with brains need enrichment. Like,
mhm.
yeah, these societies died of boredom. And I've read a few articles that were, I mean, I haven't read the academic articles because they're dense. But sort of for the layman, this is the conclusion they came to, and hardly anyone ever comes to the conclusion maybe we should have given them shit to do. I'm like, that's the lesson I will take to humans and mice and fucking octopi. Like,
Yep. Oh, octopi especially. Ooh, they get bored.
yeah.
Um, well, also, like, I don't see that there's much comparable, even if you're going to take the mice behavior to be comparable to human behavior. We don't have a world in which humans have basic necessities provided
Yeah, no.
for the entire population. So you can't, that's not comparable. There's no like real life application to that.
Right? And I could see someone with no ethics being like, "See, this is why we shouldn't give everyone plenty of food and shelter." And I'm like, I could totally see that stretch being made. I hope.
Oh, well, that stretch is constantly made. That's the whole Puritan work ethic thing.
Oh, it
If you
is.
don't make people work, then their morals will degrade.
Yeah, if they don't have to work for survival, they'll choose to lay on their butts all day.
Hmm. That's absolutely something that people believe
It's true.
frequently.
It's true. If you
And
if you make it
it's,
too
and like,
easy for them to actually have shelter and food, they won't appreciate them either.
hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, and then there will be moral decay, cats and dogs living together, gay people with good hygiene, and it's all gonna fall apart. Um,
Yep.
yeah,
By
no,
the way,
it's
you'll like this. The scientists who ran the experiment would notice the gay mice with good hygiene, and they dubbed them the beautiful ones.
delightful.
So that's, yeah.
And it's funny because people have this idea about work ethic and all of this and the deserving poor and whatnot, but the actual studies of universal basic income show that people work more
Yeah.
when their basic needs are met,
Oh,
because that's the thing that people like to do, because otherwise we get bored.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
the only people who
That's the
decrease their
moral.
work are students and parents with small children.
And if you don't want to call either of those work, then you're insane and have never done either of them.
Also that. I meant like,
Yeah.
paid work. But
Yeah.
yes.
Work in the enrichment of this social culture and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
At any rate, we can now read some more Silmarillion, where a world that is definitely not perfect and was never intended to be. I think I find that really refreshing about Iluvatar. He was like, all of the messed up shit was built in from the get go, and it's still gonna be fucking amazing. Do, 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 do. Oh, I'm not looking forward to Feanor. All right, so did we make it to the end of Anu Lindale?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I can check where we were, but my book's all the way across the room, so if you can find it.
Let these things be. I think this is where we were at. Therefore I say, Ea, let these things be, and I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be. And those of you that will may go down into it. Does that sound familiar?
I believe so, because I think we were talking about, yeah.
Yeah. And suddenly the Ainur saw afar off a light, as it were a cloud with a living heart of flame, and they knew that this was no vision only, but that Iluvatar had made a new thing, Ea, the world that is. Yeah, because in the previous paragraph it talked about how they perceived darkness now that they had never known before. Because
Right, because they had no eyes.
yeah.
They were like those, what are they? Desert pupfish?
Yeah.
The blind fish that live in that one specific cave.
Right. I think they showed up in an episode of Nature Cat. No, that was a blind newt. Never mind. Anyway, thus it came to pass that of the Ainur some abode still with Iluvatar beyond the confines of the world, but others, and among them many of the greatest and most fair, took the leave of Iluvatar and descended into it. But this condition Iluvatar made, or it is the necessity of their love, that their power should thenceforward be contained and bounded in the world, to be within it forever, until it is complete, so that they are its life, and it is theirs. And therefore they are named the Valar, the powers of the world. If you get on this ride, you can't get off until it's done.
I hope they knew about that going in. Wouldn't that be awful to be like, yeah, I'll visit a couple days,
No.
see what it's like. Oh.
Oh. Yeah, no, I'm sure they were into it. Like, what else have they got going?
Well, as we just discussed, if you're in a place with all your needs met.
But when the Valar entered into Ea, they were at first astounded and at a loss, for it was as if naught was yet made, which they had seen in vision, and all was but on point to begin, and yet unshaped, and it was dark. For the great music had been but the growth and flowering of thought in the timeless halls, and the vision only a foreshowing. But now they had entered in at the beginning of time, and the Valar perceived that the world had been but foreshadowed and foresung, and they must achieve it.
That also would be really annoying. Hey, I'm gonna go down to this great place. It's got all this cool stuff. Oh, I have to make all the cool stuff.
You make all the cool stuff. They arrive, they're like, I'm here, and it's like fucking lava flows. Like, crust magma, like
It's the bit at the beginning of Fantasia.
Yeah, totally. But with the Valar just plopped into it, like, um. Ah. So began their great labors in wastes unmeasured and unexplored, and in ages uncounted and forgotten, until in the deeps of time and in the midst of the vast halls of Ea there came to be that hour and that place, where was made the habitation of the children of Iluvatar. In this work the chief part was taken by Manwë, and Aule, and Ulmo, but Melkor too was there from the first, and he meddled in all that was done, turning it, if he might, to his own desires and purposes, and he kindled great fires. Kid needs therapy.
They do say that arson is one of the crimes that's a predictor of worse behaviors later on.
It's true. When therefore earth was yet young and full of flame, Melkor coveted it, and he said to the other Valar, "This shall be my own kingdom, and I name it unto myself. Dibs!" But Manwë was the brother of Melkor in the mind of Iluvatar, and he was the chief instrument of the second theme that Iluvatar had raised up against the discord of Melkor. And he called unto himself many spirits, both greater and less, and they came down into the fields of Arda and aided Manwë, lest Melkor should hinder the fulfillment of their labor forever, and earth should wither ere it flowered. And Manwë said unto Melkor, "This kingdom thou shalt not take for thine own, wrongfully, for many others have labored here no less than thou." And there was strife between Melkor and the other Valar. For that time Melkor withdrew and departed to other regions and sulked. And that did
That said,
there
it's my turn to rule the world.
and did there what he would, but he did not put the desire of the kingdom of Arda from his heart. Now the Valar took to themselves shape and hue, and because they were drawn into the world by love of the children of Iluvatar, for whom they hoped, they took shape after that manner which they had beheld in the vision of Iluvatar, save only in majesty and splendor. Moreover, their shape comes of their knowledge of the visible world rather than of the world itself, and they need it not, save only as we use raiment, and yet we may be naked and suffer no loss of our being. Therefore the Valar may walk, if they will, unclad, and then even the Eldar cannot clearly perceive them, though they be present. But when they did, yeah, right? But no, where'd it go? I lost it. But when they desire to clothe themselves, the Valar take upon them forms, some as of male and some as of female, for that difference of temper they had even from their beginning, and it is but bodied forth in the choice of each, not made by the choice. Even as with us, male and female may be shown by the raiment, but is not made thereby. I know he didn't intend that to be a transpositive statement, but it works.
It really does.
But the shapes wherein the great ones array themselves are not at all times like to the shapes of the kings and queens of the children of Iluvatar, for at times they may clothe themselves in their own thought, made visible in forms of majesty and dread. And the Valar drew unto them many companions, some less, some well nigh as great as themselves, and they labored together in the ordering of the earth and the curbing of its tumults. Then Melkor saw what was done, and that the Valar walked on earth as powers visible, clad in the raiment of the world, and were lovely and glorious to see, and blissful, and that the earth was becoming as a garden for their delight, for its turmoils were subdued. His envy grew then the greater within him, and he also took visible form, but because of his mood and the malice that burned in him, that form was dark and terrible. "Not in a bad mood."
What's that? But like the no good, very bad, terrible, horrible day where the kid just has like the cloud over his head all the time.
It was like Alexander in the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day.
Yes,
Something.
that's the one.
That's the one. Yep. And he descended upon Arda in power and majesty greater than any other of the Valar, as a mountain that wades in the sea and has its head above the clouds and is clad in ice and crowned with smoke and fire. He's a volcano.
Dramatic bitch.
Right? And the light of the eyes of Melkor was like a flame that withers with heat and pierces with a deadly cold. At least he's thorough.
R.I.P. Melkor, you would have loved Icy Hot.
Thus began the first battle of the Valar with Melkor for the dominion of Arda, and of those tumults the elves know but little. For what has here been declared is come from the Valar themselves, with whom the Eldalie spoke in the land of Valinor, and by whom they were instructed. But little would the Valar ever tell of the wars before the coming of the elves. Yet it is told among the Eldar that the Valar endeavored ever, in spite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn. And they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys they delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth, for as surely as the Valar began a labor, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. And yet their labor was not all in vain. And though nowhere and in no work was their will and purpose wholly fulfilled, and all things were in hue and shape other than the Valar had at first intended, slowly, nonetheless, the earth was fashioned and made firm. And thus was the habitation of the children of Iluvatar established at last in the deeps of time and amidst the innumerable stars. It'd be fun to describe this drunkenly, and then they made things, and Melkor went, "Ah!"
You know when you were a kid and you made a big tower out of Legos and then your siblings smashed it? It's that.
Or that shitty kid in class. There was always that one shitty kid who was like troubled or just a dick. Like, look at my pretty thing, and he's like, ah. Yep. Yeah, the only sibling you grew up with was me, and I'm pretty sure I didn't knock down your shit.
I don't think you ever did. You were a bit old for that. Daycare kids, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. All those temporary siblings.
Yes.
Valaquenta. Nah. Oh no, I've dropped a map. Ugh. Hoo-ha. Account of the Valar and Maiar according to the lore of the Eldar.
Sure.
Sure are. In the beginning, Eru, the one who in the Elvish tongue is named Iluvatar, made the Ainur of his thought, and they made a great music before him. In this music the world was begun. For Iluvatar, this is like the previously on right here, this paragraph.
I was going to say, we just read about this, Tolkien. Get to the point. I always skip previously on, too.
I do that, too. For Iluvatar made visible the song of the Ainur, and they beheld it as a light in the darkness, and many among them became enamored of its beauty and of its history, which they saw beginning and unfolding as in a vision. Therefore Iluvatar gave to their vision being with a capital B, and set it amid the void, and the secret fire was sent to burn at the heart of the world, and it was called Ea.
Yeah.
Then those of the Ainur who desired it arose and entered into the world at the beginning of time, and it was their task to achieve it, and by their labors to fulfill the vision which they had seen. Long they labored in the regions of Ea, which are
Why?
I had something in my throat, which are
What?
vast,
Wisconsin?
which are vast beyond the something, which are vast beyond the thought of elves and men, until in the time appointed was made Arda the kingdom of earth. Then they put on the raiment of earth, and descended into it, and dwelt therein. I was complaining about flat earthers to Wayne the other day, and I said, part of the problem they seem to have, according to the things I've seen, is that they misunderstand how scale works. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot conceptualize how much bigger than them the Earth is. That's why they ask questions like, why doesn't an airplane have to dip its nose occasionally to make allowance for the curvature of the Earth? Like that's a question that they ask. And I was like, I think if they could get into their minds the fact that they are so tiny, then it would all suddenly make a lot more sense to them. But the thought of being that tiny is terrifying, so they won't do it. And I was like, but they're like bacteria on a truck tire. And Wayne found that fucking hilarious. Like, but think about it, and like, yeah, bacteria exists, and it's on a surface that feels flat to it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yes, vast beyond the thought of elves and men, the truck tire of the Valar. The great among these spirits of the elves name the Valar, the powers of Arda, and men have often called them gods. The lords of the Valar are seven, and the Valier, the queens of the Valar, are seven also. These were their names in the elvish tongue as it was spoken in Valinor, though they have other names in the speech of the elves of Middle-earth, and their names among men are manifold. The names of the lords in due order are Manwe, Ulmo, Aule, Orome, Mandos, Lorien, and Tulkas. And the names of the queens are Varda, Yavanna, Nienna, Este, Vaire, Vana, and Nessa. Melkor is counted no longer among the Valar, and his name is not spoken upon earth.
Yeah.
Cast him out. Manwe and Melkor were brethren in the thought of Iluvatar. The mightiest of those Ainur who came into the world was, in his beginning, Melkor, but Manwe is dearest to Iluvatar and understands most clearly his purposes. He was appointed to be, in the fullness of time, the first of all kings, lord of the realm of Arda and ruler of all that dwell therein. In Arda his delight is in the winds and the clouds, and in all the regions of the air, from the heights to the depths, from the utmost borders of the vale of Arda to the breezes that blow in the grass. Sulimo he is surnamed, Lord of the breath of Arda. All swift birds, strong of wing, he loves, and they come and go at his bidding. With Manwe, this is very much the Valaquenta is just, I am describing the gods for you now. Keep track. There will be a
I'll
quiz.
do my best. Hi, Cat.
With
Are you one of the
Manwe,
gods of Arda?
with Manwe dwells Varda, Lady of the Stars, who knows all the regions of Ea. Too great is her beauty to be declared in the words of men or of elves, for the light of Iluvatar lives still in her face. In light is her power and her joy. Out of the deeps of Ea she came to the aid of Manwe, for Melkor she knew from before the making of the music, and rejected him, and he hated her and feared her more than all others whom Eru made. Ma-
Neener, neener.
Manwe and Varda are
Dang
seldom
it.
parted, and they remain in Valinor. What?
I dropped my ball of yarn and the cat's on my lap, so it's very difficult to retrieve.
Uh-oh. Yes, Manwe and Varda are seldom parted, and they remain in Valinor. Their halls are above the everlasting snow, upon crap. Oyolose, the uttermost tower of Taniquetil. If we ever have an audience, there's going to be someone among them who tells me that I am mispronouncing all of the letters with umlauts over them, and I am okay with that.
Look, umlauts are very confusing.
Right? I tend to think of them as just, an accent, like put the stress on this, but I don't think that's how it works. Nevertheless, comma, if E with umlauts is pronounced like then his name is actually Manwe, and I'm not into it.
Yeah, I don't like that. We're not doing that.
And Oyolase. Sorry, nope, not happening. Oyolase, the uttermost tower of Taniquetil, tallest of all the mountains upon earth. When Manwe there ascends his throne and looks forth, if Varda is beside him, he sees further than all other eyes, through mist and through darkness and over the leagues of the sea. And if Manwe is with her, Varda hears more clearly than all other ears the sound of voices that cry from east to west, from the hills and the valleys, and from the dark places that Melkor has made upon earth. Of all the great ones who dwell in this world, the elves hold Varda most in reverence and love. El-Bereth they name her, and they call upon her name out of the shadows of Middle-earth and uplift it in song at the rising of the stars. Ulmo is alone. Oh, excuse me. Ulmo is the Lord of Waters. He is alone. He dwells nowhere long, but moves as he will in all the deep waters about the earth or under the earth. He is next in might to Manwe, and before Valinor was made, he was closest to him in friendship. But thereafter he went seldom to the councils of the Valar, unless great matters were in debate. For he kept all Arda in thought, and he has no need of any resting place. Moreover, he does not love to walk upon land, and will seldom clothe himself in a body after the manner of his peers. If the children of Eru beheld him, they were filled with a great dread, for the arising of the king of the sea was terrible, as a mounting wave that strides to the land, with dark helm foam-crested, and raiment of mail shimmering from silver down into shadows of green.
Neat.
He writes as if for illustrators, and I totally get why there's an entire, subculture of artists who do nothing but illustrate Tolkien. Someday I'll paint that because it's perfect. It's a perfect description. The trumpets of Manwe are loud, but Ulmo's voice is deep as the deeps of the ocean, which he only has seen. Nonetheless, Ulmo loves both elves and men, and never abandoned them, not even when they lay under the wrath of the Valar. At times he will come unseen to the shores of Middle-earth, or pass far inland up firths of the sea, and there make music upon his great horns, the Ulamuri, that are wrought of white shell. And those to whom that music comes hear it ever after in their hearts, and longing for the sea never leaves them again.
Under the sea, doo-doo, doo-doo.
I was thinking about the gulls. Like, his horns sound like the gulls, because that's what Legolas heard.
I mean, could be both.
Bah! That was my gull impersonation. Oh well.
Have you heard a seagull?
Yes, but my throat doesn't make that noise.
Yeah, mine neither.
Oh. Boop, boop.
Do you think this cat wants attention? I can't tell.
No, I think that she is merely entertaining herself as best she can, and has no intention of interrupting you whatsoever. Let me see that face. Totally innocent face.
That is what she is known for the most, is her expression of innocence. Every time someone new meets her, they're like, your cat looks really mad. And I'm like, no, that's just her face.
Cat has a resting beach face.
She does.
But mostly Ulmo speaks to those who dwell in Middle-earth with voices that are heard only as music of water. For all seas, lakes, rivers, fountains, and springs are in his government, so that the elves say that the spirit of Ulmo runs in all the veins of the world. Thus news comes to Ulmo, even in the deeps, of all the needs and griefs of Arda, which otherwise would be hidden from Manwe. Aule has might little less than Ulmo. His lordship is over all the substances of which Arda is made. In the beginning he wrought much in fellowship with Manwe and Ulmo, and the fashioning of all lands was his labor. Sky, sea, land, it checks out.
Mm-hmm.
He is a smith and a master of all crafts, and he delights in works of skill, however small, as much as in the mighty building of old. His are the gems that lie deep in the earth, and the gold that is fair in the hand, no less than the walls of the mountains and the basins of the sea. The Noldor learned most of him, and he was ever their friend. Melkor was jealous of him. There's nothing Melkor's not jealous of.
Right. I'm like, that's not. Sky's
Ah.
blue, water's wet, Melkor's jealous.
For Aule was most like himself in thought and in powers, and there was long strife between them, in which Melkor ever marred or undid the works of Aule, and Aule grew weary in repairing the tumults and disorders of Melkor. Both also desired to make things of their own that should be new and unthought of by others, and delighted in the praise of their skill. But Aule remained
Oh!
faithful.
I'm being attacked!
Well, you stopped giving her
Heartlessly
attention.
and viciously. What?
You stopped giving her attention.
Well, yeah, because when I tried to pet her, she bit me.
That's no excuse. Bad human. Your cat is the most spoiled cat I know, so I have no idea what her problem is.
I beg your pardon. She's the correct amount of spoiled.
Indulged. The most indulged cat I know.
Anyway.
Both also desired to make things of their own that should be new and unthought of by others, and delighted in the praise of their skill. But Aule remained faithful to Eru, and submitted all that he did to his will, and he did not envy the works of others, but sought and gave counsel, whereas Melkor spent his spirit in envy and hate, until at last he could make nothing, save in mockery of the thought of others, and all their works he destroyed if he could. I hate to say it, but we've all known this person.
Mm-hmm.
Very recognizable set of traits. And it's so freaking toxic and tragic.
Yeah.
The spouse of Aule is Yavanna, the giver of fruits. She is the lover of all things that grow in the earth, and all their countless forms she holds in her mind, from the trees like towers in forests long ago, to the moss upon stones, or the small and secret things in the mold. In reverence, Yavanna is next to Varda among the queens of the Valar. In the form of a woman, she is tall and robed in green, but at times she takes other shapes. Some there are who have seen her standing like a tree under heaven, crowned with the sun, and from all its branches there spilled a golden dew upon the barren earth, and it grew green with corn. But the roots of the trees were in the waters of Ulmo, and the winds of Manwe spoke in its leaves. Kementari, Queen of the Earth, she is surnamed in the Eldarin tongue. The Feanturi, Masters of Spirits, are brethren, and they are called, most often, Mandos and Lorien. Yet these are rightly the names of the places of their dwelling, and their true names are Namo and Irmo. Why? We don't know.
Just cuz.
Just 'cause. Because this feels so much more like a real world when there isn't any internal logic to it. People are misnamed because they live places. Oh. Anyway, Namo the Elder dwells in Mandos, which is westward in Valinor. He is the keeper of the houses of the dead and the summoner of the spirits of the slain. He forgets nothing, and he knows all things that shall be, save only those that lie still in the freedom of Iluvatar. He is the doomsman of the Valar, but he pronounces his dooms and his judgments only at the bidding of Manwë. Vaire, the weaver, is his spouse, who weaves all things that have ever been in time into her storied webs, and the halls of Mandos that ever widen as the ages pass are clothed with them. And that's where we'll leave it for now. And that's kind of cool, because that means the spirits of the dead can wander around looking at these tapestries that portray the entire history of Middle-earth so far and be like, oh, huh.
That's what happened to my socks.
Right? Like, I can't go back and, like, see how my children are doing, but look, here they are. Oh, good. They bought a house. Like... like, why did my mother always cry when it rained? Oh, this is why. You know, that just that would pass the eons, wouldn't it? So I see that she has possibly forgiven you for looking away from her for 5 minutes.
It's unclear. I mostly picked her up because she was trying to eat my knitting.
Well, she doesn't appear to be fighting, so I think that was her goal the whole time.
She's not fighting, but let's just say the tail is not in a particularly calm position.
And of course, her face is resting demon slayer.
Mm-hmm. If I put you down, are you going to bite me again?
Maybe.
Yes. Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to try and end the stream with one hand. I will see you later.
All right. I love you.
Love you too.
Cuidado.
Llamas.